it's very important for product design as a function to be able to not just see the impact but learn from it.
We never had someone who brings in your perspective.
Because of the nature of the work that I do, people want to see results in a short amount of time. So you come in, you work like hell, you try and make as big an impact to help them get closer to their goals as possible in the shortest amount of time possible, right?
Why have you never built your own product? Because someone would think you would know exactly how to do it.
Current climate is probably less accepting of, a few guys in a pitch deck.
Yeah, maybe in 5 years, the market's going to be similar and
maybe
and money's going to be free again. Hi, Alex. It's
Hello.
A pleasure.
Nice
it's a
to meet
pleasure having you here. We had... we know us for quite a couple of years now, although we haven't had much of an exchange.
Yeah, that's right.
In the podcast, we already had a lot of guests, people that are freelancing, people that are that build up their own agency, that build up their own product, their own startup. We never had someone who brings in your perspective.
Right.
So what would be interesting for me to know is, did you actively decide to choose that career path, or was it just because it just happened?
Honestly, it's kind of a bit of both, which is, let me explain. So the things that I decided I wanted was variety in products, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what's super interesting for me is learning about different industries and really diving into
Mm-hmm.
products, both on the B2B, B2C side, and a mixture of the two. But I knew I wasn't an agency guy, because I like to see kind of the fruits of the labor. I like to see the impact, and I think it's very important for product design as a function to be able to not just see the impact but learn from it and move forward. So what I saw along the way was working in that kind of environment. It gave me that that varied experience that I was after, but also allowed me to get deep into the kind of the impact side of things and making sure that actually product design functions in a way that grows with its consumers or customers or whatever.
I can imagine that this is also it gives us the stakes are higher for the venture builder. As an agency, I can imagine it's also not great if you lose a client, right?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
For a venture builder, it's you have your stakes in that company, in that mission, and it to me, I could imagine that also your role then is far more involved also into strategic things, right?
Yeah,
compared to an agency.
Yeah, so let me tell you a bit about B10 VC. So the way we worked was we had a deal flow, and so we had a big deal flow of companies that were looking for investment. So they'd come in and pitch to us looking for investment, and everyone that worked directly for the venture capital company, the operational VC, we had different expertise. So there was me in product design, we had a legal person, we had someone specifically for funding, someone for HR and team building. They would pitch to us, and for the companies that we were considering making an investment in, we would then go away and do a due diligence. So for me, it would be around product and product design. We would do this kind of due diligence, and then the way that we function was we would actually pitch back to the founders or the companies that were looking for investment about what our take would be if we were to give them the investment, how we would suggest they would spend that money in our different expertise. So from that, we'd start that conversation in a very strategical kind of forward-thinking way.
Yeah.
So it's not just money we were giving them operational, and it was up to the founders to decide whether they would like to spend the money on the operational side of the VC, right? So we were kind of split into two entities, right? Had the fund, and then we had our kind of agency, but even though we were constantly supporting the company, so we were all under one roof.
Was that a condition?
No.
Okay, so it was more a recommendation?
Recommendation. It was also so the investor partners could see how the founders would take feedback.
How they would react to that.
It was suggestions or thoughts or learnings that we had from our experience, and then in some cases they took it on board. In some cases they obviously had their own ideas around how things would work, and because of some extra context, it wasn't relevant or something. It could be around team structure. You never really know, but it was more just like to show them that we were going to give them support, not just money.
I think that's really interesting, because I have the feeling, or like it seems like it is like not only a transactional kind of relationship, like we give you money and you have to do what we say, but more like an approach of collaboration and co-creation, if you call it that way.
Yeah.
Which is not always the case, I guess.
No, it's not always the case. No, I mean, they called themselves an operational VC. So, it is like, it was intended from the start that we would be a team effort, right?
Yep.
So the kind of companies we invested in, some of them were very small, so like just a founding team, a few engineers, product out there. Some of them were a little bit more mature. So it really the amount of co-creation depended on the stage that the company were at, but we were typically investing in seed stage. So.
Okay. Can you name like the most, from your point of view, it doesn't need to be monetary, but the most successful product that you like that you support or that you accompanied through those 12 years?
For sure. I mean, in that specific company, the outlier was a company called Car Jump.
Yeah.
So the guys purchased this in the early stages of the fund. Quickly restructured. So it was a team that needed restructuring, completely new management, new team from the ground up, small team at the side, and then within 18 months we'd exited from the company. So like I was very, very hands-on with them all the way through that, working, building up the product design team, relaunching the product, and it exited to the PSG group. So this was the outlying success, I think, both from a time and money point of view, but
it somehow contradicts the statement of, okay, like I want to, like it's great to be able to have strategic impact, to see the product grow, and then on the other hand, like at some point there will be an exit, most likely. So doesn't that contradict somehow the statement that we had before to say, well, okay, I want to be a long-term part of it. I want to see it grow.
So when you're looking, when you invest both people's time and money in an early stage company, and you're thinking of it from a strategical point of view, at some point, so the goal for each of the companies was to take them through to a Series A or get them to the next round of investment. Of course, when you get to that point and you start looking around, and there's like a kind of exit universe, and if the idea is that you do take that route, what you're doing is still getting an investment based on your strategical outlook that you've put into place, right? So you've put the first part of the plan in place. Either you do it to get the next round of investment, or in this case, it was a little bit of an outlier in the fact that it ended up being an exit. So this is very unusual.
Okay, so that was not the
goal.
Okay, it was not the goal. Okay, I see.
Yeah. But what it meant from product design point of view, so we're getting very kind of investor heavy, but from my point of view was, it meant that we needed to grow and mature the product at a very, very quick pace, because we wanted to push forward and make this thing really work. So this is the case for all startups, and this one just happened to have this external, but this acquisition.
Yeah. I mean, and also it's like it's a reward in itself as well to, have the validation of like a company where, they most likely know like what they are doing, what they are buying. And we have a very good product market fit here. And it seems like we structured the company in general, but also from a product point of view, very well.
Yeah.
Like it's also,
It's exactly product market fit. There are users using the application specifically. The service is working very well, and it's something someone can buy into.
How much were you involved into the talks, the chats, the exchanges with potential companies that the VC decided to invest in? Like, did you have a seat on the decision table as a product, as product perspective?
Yeah, so I mean, I sort of painted the picture of how we functioned. So we had an open calendar with people coming to pitch, right? They would ask our general feedback, of course, after the pitches.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go into all of them. If they're very product heavy, of course, then I would. Some of them, some of the business models just didn't require it, right? So I wasn't involved in those conversations. For the ones that did, for sure, we'd all give feedback afterwards. The investment partners were keen on some companies other than more than others, of course. So the minute we were engaged to kind of then look into the companies and say, hey, they're like, hey, we're thinking, based on the pitch that you saw and the conversation we had, we've run some numbers, had a look at this. Let's do this due diligence. At this point, the stuff that we put together is definitely influencing also the investment partners' understanding of whether they should invest in them or not. And again, like I alluded to it earlier, I mentioned it earlier, like depending on the kind of reaction and like how open the company is to the input is definitely a deciding factor. And I guess that would help them decide.
I can imagine that also, like, product is a very it's a core topic, I can imagine, for many of the founders that you had conversations with. Because if I imagine, I found a company, it's somehow related or maybe also solely built on a platform, a web application, some kind of digital product. If someone like wants to tell me what to do there, he's like basically talking into the core of what I'm doing, right? So from my understanding, if we talk about marketing distribution, it's okay, we can talk about that, but it's still my product.
Yes.
And then there comes a company or comes someone like you and says, well, okay, let's talk about the product. Like, what should we maybe change? And I can imagine that this is also like sometimes a tough conversation that you can have with the founders of the companies, because
for sure. So there's two parts to it. So one is the stage that I mentioned, the kind of investment part of it. Like this due diligence, it wasn't necessarily like there would be some suggestions to the like, hey, I see you doing this right. This could have some improvement. This wasn't the tricky stage for me, actually. The tricky stage was later on, once the investments were made and we were working together. And then, we invested in 10 companies. We were working with them it was supposed to take 3 years. We did it in 4.5. But these things take a bit longer sometimes. And once you're working with the founders and you're working with them, and you are still this external party who's coming in to work with them. And this can be a bit trickier because I came across it a few times where you would be trying to guide them in a certain direction and they're trying to guide things in another direction. They're very much trying to get to the next round of funding or you make sure that customer base is going, whatever. And then it did a couple of times happen where it was a little bit of a tricky conversation where is my advice coming from their investors? This kind of.
Okay.
So this is where it could be a bit trickier, but it was a very, very good experience to kind of learn to manage this external. Is it just are you here to sort of help us implement our will? Is it from the investors? There was a few difficult things to kind of manage.
And I can imagine it's packed with learnings as well. Like help.
Absolutely, yeah. No, this was super helpful, especially helps me do what I do now, which is after working at this VC company, it was until about 2020. I joined an agency for a bit after that, and the goal there was because I wanted to work for some bigger brands. And I tried it for 6 months, decided I didn't like it, left, and then I went back into the startup world. And joined a startup for a while, and then for the last few years, I've been essentially doing what I did for the VC, but for myself. So the learnings I learned through the bench builders and through working at the VC to like how to really act as an external partner, but make sure you're an integrated part of the team. This is how I've got to doing what I do now, which is working as an interim head of product design for scale-ups mostly.
I mentioned earlier, I think it was off the record, that we are also talking, I mean, we obviously talk to a lot of people because that's our job, but also there are people that are currently planning on, like, building their own product, or that are maybe building their own product. With AI, it's even easier to do that. You saw a couple of, maybe a lot more than a couple of pitches and things. Do you have an advice for people that are currently building their product? Like, what are usually things where like the investors either said, or also you said, well, okay, this is typically a situation or a challenge where a company fails, or is not it doesn't get the investment. Like, are there like typical things that occur?
A lot of people starting a company, they start from with the engineering foundation. They start building up a product, and the product then starts to live in the real world, and then it comes into contact with human beings. And I think you mentioned AI, so what I guess we're going to see now is a lot of people developing products even easier without having a product or like a product designer to be able to speak to customers. And to the kind of second part of that, I think this is the biggest thing is, I mean, I've worked on a multitude of different companies in different areas, in different configurations of B2B and B2C. So obviously there are levels to it, depending, obviously, if you're a consumer brand or app or whatever, you need to really be speaking to customers. But even on the B2B side, the user pool may be smaller, but you can get to your user base and partner with the user base easier. So I think the very important thing to do is, if you're developing your own software, even easier now with AI and stuff like this, you make sure that you don't get too comfortable with things being so easy. And not that it's difficult to speak to customers, but you have to make sure that you're listening. And I think I would say that would be still in whichever world we're living in, pre-AI or after AI, it's very important to make sure that when I say user-based, I'm not just talking about usability and UX and stuff like this. I'm talking about product market fit. Like, hey, you really need to understand your customers. Some B2B companies I've worked with have done this very well, where they, in the early stages, they're very much a partner with their early customers to help building solutions to fix their problems.
Real problems.
And then you try and work with a couple to see whether the similarities lie, so you can build a product, right? And then you start to scale it out. And the only way to do that is to have this very good connection with your users, customers, clients, whatever. And I think this is very important, and pre and post AI.
Because you said listen to your customers, right? Like, make sure there's a product market fit. And I can imagine that, as you just said, like, often the founders are like somewhere from maybe tech, or maybe a situation where they are able to build something. And now with AI, I can imagine it shifts from it's easier for not a certain group of people, but for all of the people to build something.
Right.
But maybe the focus then lies more on the, why are we building it? Rather than, we're able to do something, but we don't know why we're actually doing it.
This is where you need the human in the loop, so to speak, right? You need to have, this is where product design maybe is a little bit separate from product itself, is where you have this understanding of how to speak to people about the why, right? So you have this empathetic understanding, and there's some real nitty-gritty basics about not you can have a conversation with anyone and kind of get the answers you want if you ask in a certain way, right? So if you're doing that, you might be misleading yourself. So this is why I think it's very, very important to have this empathetic kind of product design view on products. Even if you can build and ship software very easily and get it in front of people. This is something AI can't do.
Yeah. And
Anyway.
we'll see. We mentioned it before, maybe to leave the VC time behind us. Why did you do that? So why did you leave the VC world and decided to do it on your own now?
Well, I mean, I left the VC world, as I mentioned before, because I'd worked for these very early stage startups to scale up point of view, and then I started getting FOMO because I didn't have any big brands under my belt. So I joined a big WPP agency in Berlin. I was their head of product design. And I think it was a little bit of ego. I was like, I want to work with Bosch, Volkswagen. I want to work with some of these big brands. Yeah. I wanted to see how that was and see if I could kind of, how I could impact that with a big team. It was also one of the biggest teams I'd managed at the time. So I went from that back into working directly with a startup that just went through Y Combinator. Did the same thing I did when I was working at the VC. Scaled the team up. We, collectively scaled the team up from, I was their 7th employee. I think there were 70 when I left. And then from there, I decided I'm going to work for myself and I'm going to do these interim head of product design roles. The reason for that is because it's a universe that I'm very familiar with, which is going in, helping out as an external consultant, but being able to feel like I can integrate myself into the team very quickly, and I can help them even though I'm an external partner as if I'm one of the team. And it's just a skill that I learned from my time at venture building and with the VC over a very long period of time. So it came second nature. And quite frankly, for personal reasons, I get the downtime in between jobs as well.
Okay. Yeah.
This is something that I find I need to work on my own interests and my own things to still feel hungry. You know what I mean? Because you can get quite burnt out, of course. So there's a bit of that as well.
Yeah, and I can imagine, and you're like, you have it in your own hands, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you're still employed, although the role is technically quite similar, you it's not up to you to decide if you're now joining a company as interims. If you're employed for a VC.
Sure, exactly. Yeah. So I have some choice. I mean, obviously some stability is also nice as well, but so far so good. I enjoy it. I think it's good. I can pick the companies I work with. And the companies that I do these roles for have all come, we talked about this offline, I think, will also come from my kind of network. I've been kind of working with, in Berlin for so long. I know so many people that are kind of multipliers, if you like. A lot of my roles have come from recommendations, and I've been asked to do a few of them as well. So it was just a natural progression, I think. Yeah, really.
And because this is something that I would like to dive deeper later on as well, all of the, because it's to some degree, you have to make sure where to get the projects from.
Yeah.
And what I thought, and this is a thought that I had before when we were talking about the VC a part of your CV was you mentioned that you learn a lot during that time. Also, that things that you can now use in your role.
Mm-hmm.
And then you said, my question would be, is it sometimes easier if you're an external partner, you're sometimes in discussions with maybe the founding team, the CEOs, whoever, is it sometimes easier to have that VC and having your back basically? Is it easier to have those discussions? Because if you're a freelancer, you're technically still, you're like a one-man show that is from external, and and you can still be reduced to that's one guy's opinion.
I can see how that kind of makes sense, but in all honesty, I kind of operate the same as I did when I was.
So it doesn't make a difference.
VC, I think that's also what the companies that I work for appreciate, that they're hiring me to give them my opinion and also help them see out my opinion. along with theirs. And I operate on a day-to-day basis in exactly the same way as if I'm working for their investor or if I'm working for myself.
Okay.
Yeah, because I learned whilst I was at the VC how to help the companies, right? And this is the ultimate goal, is for me to help them progress to their goals.
Yeah.
So a lot of my onboarding with the companies I work in an interim basis for myself is exactly the same thing that I would do, which is really get an understanding of the company, understand what it is they're trying to achieve, and then I base all of my recommendations and all the things that I suggest of how we change the composition of the design team, change the design ops side of things, work on very specific projects, is always in line with their goals. So they understand that I have this deep knowledge. And this is what I learned from the VC. It wasn't necessarily because I was backed by their investor. As I said, this does have problems, as well as it did have some plus sides as well. But the experience learned was really how to understand the companies and give them value.
Okay, yeah, makes sense in a way as well. Like if you let your results and the ability to translate the goals and the strategy of the company into product and the product design and the product design team, I think there's no need to do like proper, convincing of the people because they see how it develops.
Yeah, I mean, I mean that in itself is convincing.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'm trying to say, hey, look, these are my recommendations for. Try what examples to give you, but these are my recommendations about what the design team should look like in 6 months, right?
Yeah.
This is the easiest one to kind of think of. And then there's more nitty-gritty stuff like the design ops and like, do you really want to scale to multiple platforms? How many, what does the runway look like? What features do you need to achieve the goals you're going to achieve? And then I'm trying to convince them about a setup that will bring that forward. So it is still convincing them, I think, not just on like what to do, how to do it, my suggestions in line that will bring their goals to fruition. But it's also still, I mean, working to make them understand the value of those ideas coming from product design as well as from engineering as well as from everything. So like you really have to be banging the drum for like good design, good user experience, good understanding of your customer. This is a constant and something I'm doing all the time. Right? So there is a lot of convincing going on.
That's I mean this is something that's like I think I very often hear like general if we're talking about external support, it's like it still happens, right? That like those conversations and about the why and how it has to like fit into the overall planning and stuff like that. If we're talking about interim roles, I mean they're more often than not on a strategic level. You have you have more impact. Mm-hmm. If a company gets you on board, is it usually because this role doesn't exist yet and they need your advice and your consulting towards a certain stage of the company?
Yes.
Or is it also sometimes the role that our head of product just left? Mm-hmm. We didn't find someone to replace him and we need to like cover a certain period of time until we find someone new.
It's rarely the latter, to be honest with you. Okay. So it's mostly like they need someone in the interim that has the experience and knowledge to help them understand what it is they're looking for in my replacement, right? So actually the last two companies I've joined as a head of product design, and I joined in a way where they're not even sure if they want a head of product design or just a lead for the time being, because they're trying to scale up, and I try and lay the foundation so they have a good lead, they have a good team, and then they can in the future have a head of product design. So the role doesn't even exist for the last year.
And maybe won't in the future.
If I have anything to do with it, they definitely will. This is something I'm working on, because again, it's like the value of product design. This is what I'm trying to do, is convince them It's that they need that strategical partner to be able to spar with the head of product, to spar with the C-level product guy, you know, or whatever. Design shouldn't just be like a production function.
Or like an option that you say.
It should be a strategic function. And this is, I've had varying different experiences of success in convincing people this, but anyway.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's interesting. Because, I mean, usually I somehow remembered like as like interims positions is like, okay, we have the position permanently in the company, and then at some point someone leaves, and 6 months later someone joins, and we need that cover. But it seems like most of the companies that you're joining are like in some kind of growth or transformation
exactly.
process.
So one of the companies was in a growth phase, they cut back, and then they needed to build up the product design function again. Another one is definitely in scale-up phase. So they previously had some sort of design team. They let some people go. Again, it's like a rebuild of the team and restructuring. So especially on the latter one, what they'd done is built a team which couldn't deliver what they needed. So that's where I come in to be like, okay, this is what we should be looking for. This is how we should build the team out. And then on the day-to-day stuff, this is how we should be. Each of the product designers in the different pods should be partnering with the PMs. They should be working together with them, and it's like a design process thing that we try and implement. So yeah, I think from my experience, I can help them from an external point of view in this way. Yeah.
We mentioned before, like you mentioned beforehand, that the companies that you're now working with, and also that you have been working with as either a freelancer or now like in your role as interim head of product design, that they came, or like you were able to do them because you always were like very well connected during that time. I feel like, especially this year and also last year, there are a lot of people that are also trying to be external partner, or having like, or they did that the last couple of years and they're now struggling with finding the right, like, you know, finding new projects, finding new clients. And you said, okay, you were always very well connected. Like, is that something that you actively pushed and tried to like be in that exchange, or is it just something that naturally came and you were like, okay, it's somehow like there are just so many people knocking on your door?
Don't let me paint too much of a rosy picture. I mean, I've got crowds of clients outside my door knocking on the door, but it's just a nice side effect of the career I've had, right? I've worked for companies that have investments in lots of other companies. So there's this kind of network effect, right? There's this multiplier effect. You know, one person. I've been in Berlin for so many years now, 13 years nearly. It's like you work with one person 8 years ago. They've worked also for 10 other startups. Connections, you know. So I did in the beginning, when I first moved to Berlin, I was very kind of active in the product design scene. I was going to conferences, I was doing meetups, things like this, finding stuff that, you know, because it was kind of interesting to see people working on different stuff. But to be honest with you, in terms of the work that I get, it's usually people that I've worked with before, or it's someone that is employing me based on direct recommendation of someone I've worked with before.
Okay.
So the network effect or the connections are through previous colleagues from before.
And then I guess, you know, you did a pretty good job during that time. I suppose otherwise they wouldn't.
So. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, it's always very nice when someone's recommending you. The interesting thing is when someone that's working full time for a company is trying to help convince the C-level that, hey, we need someone with this experience to help us with this function, and I think this guy can help us out in the short term. it's a very nice thing. It's very flattering, of course, but it's not always the case.
Yeah. I mean, that would be the ideal picture, but I think, as you just said, sometimes maybe it's also not too bad to have some kind of space and time for calming down and getting hungry again for those kind of projects.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they're pretty full on, right? Yeah. Okay, so I join a company. I've done it so many times where you're an external partner working with these companies. We're primates. We're kind of seen as this outsider who comes in. We're not really onboarded. We're onboarded a little bit, but you have to kind of claw your way into the mix very, very quickly. And then because of the nature of the work that I do, people want to see results in a short amount of time.
Yep.
So it's full on, right? So you come in, you work like hell, and you try and make as big an impact to help them get closer to their goals as possible in the shortest amount of time possible, right? So this is why it's good to have some time to
You confirmed that, and you're joining companies during change processes, during growth phases, or regrowing or transformation.
Different flux.
It's always very dynamic.
Yeah.
And then you're going in, and then after somewhere between 6 and 18 months, I suppose, you're leaving again because at some degree your job is done away. Have you? Because also, if I look back into your career or look back at your career, there never was a situation where you had the chance to work on a product for really, really, really long time, 4, 5, 6, 7 years.
No.
Have you never missed that?
I mean, the longest I worked for a fintech company. I mentioned them earlier. They went through Y Combinator. I joined them as the 7th employee. This was the longest I worked on one product. I have to check my CV, but I think it was about 2 years.
Yeah.
But we weren't even really sure what the product was in the beginning, and we were doing this very early stage kind of testing. And then when we got a hold of something, we went hard with it, and we developed the product out. So I think this was the longest I spent on a product, and I think it's probably the longest I will spend on a product as well. Unless it's my product, I'm gonna want to work on something else. I think, because I've worked at this in this kind of way for different stages of different companies, pre-seed, some initial growth phases, then quite big scale ups, right? And I just love the variety of not just the products, but the different company stages and things like this. And
so it's less about it's less about you don't want to work for a single product. It's more you would even more you would rather have to have the variety of different products. So it's not that you don't like working for a product for quite long. It's more it would, at the same time, that would mean you would not have the chance to work on different products, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I think that's probably right. I mean, I mentioned before, my role is show a lot of some impact in a short amount of time, do as much as you can in that amount of time. This is only sustainable for a certain amount of time also, and I said, unless it's my product and I'm building something out myself, I need some variety. I need to be able to switch it out, and also I really, really, really enjoy jumping into a new company, learning about a new industry. I love this accelerated learning phase. It's the thing that interests me a lot. And I've just never got to that point with the company. I mean, maybe it will happen, never say never, where I'm I still feel like I'm learning a lot, I think that's part of it. I really enjoy feeling like I'm growing, because each role is helping me grow.
It's I can imagine that this is the case. Why have you never built your own product?
I've thought about it many times, and I've had lots of conversations with various people about starting something, and have I wouldn't say got to any good stage with that, but there was definitely some steps taken in different directions. I was also talking to a company that had already started a product. It was actually some design software. And I was very interested in joining them, kind of, they were the founders, but, joining them as having a big share of the company and stuff. But I would say it's because I haven't quite found the right thing. I'm not even sure I still really want to be honest with you. Something I was very heavily into around 5-6 years ago. And as time goes on, I feel like it's probably not. It's not a goal of mine, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, but why? I was like, I'm just curious. Like, because someone would think you would know exactly how to do it and what the usual
knowing
problems are.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, I know this. I guess it's an honest answer would be like I haven't found the right partners to do it with yet. I need complementary skill set. And I think the people that I've discussed different ideas with, it's maybe a bit of a cliche, but I don't think the idea is necessarily as important as making sure that you have the right team, the right founding partners to work with, to be able to kind of adjust and find your way and like all have the same energy, vibration, your vibrations match somehow. This is something I've not found, and I'm not looking for it.
Okay, so it's not that you say, well, okay, I need to do it. You're quite happy with.
Yeah, I could have. I've had many opportunities. I could have started something. I think now the current climate is probably less accepting of a few guys in a pitch deck get some money to work on something for a couple of years.
That's true.
But back in the day, that was definitely an opportunity, and I think if I was going to do it, I probably would have done it back then.
Yeah. And maybe maybe in 5 years, the market's gonna be similar, and
maybe
money's gonna be free again.
Yeah, let's see. But even if it was, like I said, I don't think it's not a priority. I mean, also I'm kind of, I've spoken in the last 2 and a bit more years since I've been doing these interim positions. I speak to everyone, right? So I've been speaking to a lot of early stage startups around founding product designer roles. But yeah, I think if I was going to do something like that, like I'm working more in more established companies now, scale ups, things like this. I feel like I've kind of matured as the market has matured as well. And going back into this very early stage scrappy thing, it would have to be just
okay okay, I see. So it just hasn't clicked yet for the right idea and the right
and I'm not sure. It's not a priority. Let's say. What's more interesting for me right now is working with these scale up problems. I would say this is way more meaty for me to get into.
Maybe one last question. I don't know if you can answer that or want to answer that, but what was like the most interesting project or like company that you ever worked with or for?
Yeah.
Because I think there were a couple.
I think as I've said, like the thing that interests me is learning about a new industry and like diving. Like I love getting deep on something, right? Some of the industries that I've enjoyed diving into have been the fashion industry. I think very, very complex problems arise from that. There's a play to earn model that I'm learning about right now, which is very interesting. I wouldn't say there's one company that's been that I would say is a definite outlier there. Yeah, it's a bit of a cop out of an answer, but.
No, it's fine. It's if it's the real one, then that's the answer. So I think it's
so what? Yeah, I mean, some products I've worked on have been I would say not that interesting, but I've really enjoyed speaking to, let's say, so in the fintech world, speaking to underwriters that underwrite loans. Right, this sounds very dry. And you're working on a product that could be perceived as very dry, but just this like learning about what their needs are. I think this is really interesting, even if the product isn't something that I would say has been the most interesting product for me to work on, because all of the products I worked on have interested me in some way.
Sure.
What would you from what I've worked on? What would you have thought I would have said?
I didn't have an answer in mind. For me personally, I would have thought, just like from the market dynamic, like from the outward in perspective, that it maybe was Fling.
I mean, yeah, we had it's very widespread. There's a lot of users. The service is liked mostly. It posed some challenges in a different way, which I found super interesting to work on. But yeah,
I think, I can always I can only see the outward in perspective, and I think behind the scenes also, in terms of the product and the challenges and also the market and situation. I think you just can't tell if you haven't been in the project.
Actually, I've just remembered something. So I worked with one startup that so they were working in this kind of circular economy. So it's around electronic goods having this digital passport, which the EU is introducing, and this was probably the most satisfying, because it was one of the tech products I worked on where it felt like it was doing some good. So the idea was around helping them build out a vision and a first iteration of a product, where you could tell a company like Saturn or so, when they sell a phone, they can promise to the customer that a phone exactly like that has been disposed of and recycled completely.
Okay.
So that it was like a tokenized thing. And then what this would do is like feed back into this passport thing. So when you get the phone, you can see where all of the metals and cobalt.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And they were working with partners in Nigeria, where a lot of the phones go into, and not just phones and all sorts of electronic goods, they just get burnt. And then you have people like climbing through it, picking out the metals, poisoning themselves and the earth and stuff like this. But the goal of this company was to get the sellers and retailers of these electronic goods to pay for the responsible recycling of the phones. This I found actually a very fulfilling job. It was quite a short one, but this was very interesting. Yeah, I'd say that was probably one of the better ones. Yeah, because you work in the tech world, and there's finance and there's growth and there's this and there's that, and in the end, I think it's kind of a idealistic view, but it's nice to use your abilities for something that could actually help as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a very, very great answer to, to have as an ending word.
Yeah.
It was a great pleasure having you here, and
thanks for inviting me. Appreciate it.
It was very, very, very interesting for me also to hear your story. Thanks for having you. Thanks for the nice talk. Thanks also for listening, and hope you tune in next time as well. See you next time. Bye bye.
See ya. I think the very important thing to do is, if you're developing your own software, even easier now with AI and stuff like this, make sure that you don't get too comfortable with things being so easy. And not that it's difficult to speak to customers, but you have to make sure that you're listening so you can build a product, right? And then you can start to scale it out. And the only way to do that is this very good connection with your users, customers, clients, whatever. Yeah.
We never had someone who brings in your perspective. Comes someone like you and says, well, okay, let's talk about the product. Like, what should we maybe change? And I can imagine that it's also like sometimes a tough conversation that you can have.
You are still this external party who's coming in to work with them. If you're doing that, you might be misleading yourself. So this is why I think it's very, very important to have this empathetic kind of product design view on products. Don't get too comfortable with things being so easy.
Why have you never built your own product?
Current climate is probably less accepting of a few guys in a pitch deck.
Yeah, maybe in 5 years, the market's gonna be similar, and
maybe
and money's gonna be free again.